My sister said, "Don't bring your poor energy to my wedding." The whole family laughed. I just said, "Understood." So I booked the venue a day early when they arrived. You know, that kind of comment that comes with a smile but is made to crush you inside? That's how she said it. With that mocking tone of someone who feels superior just because she got what she wanted. My sister was always the family's favorite. The pretty one. The one who got a 10th birthday party, a car at 18, and applause even when she breathed wrong. Me? I was the shadow. The one who needs to understand that life isn't always fair. The one who heard, "You should take after your sister." Ain. The last few months, even with all the wounds, I tried to get closer. I went with her to pick out the dress, recommended a photographer, offered to help with the venue. She pretended to include me, but always with that look like she was doing me a favor, until that family dinner. Everyone laughing, talking about the wedding, discussing plans, expenses, flowers, and I was there listening in silence. That's when someone joked, "You're bringing someone, right?" And before I could answer, my sister cut in, "Just don't bring your poor energy to my wedding." The laughter was instant. My dad coughed to cover it. My mom looked down, but no one defended me. No one said, "Hey, that was cruel." My face burned, but I didn't react. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just took a deep breath, looked at her, and said, "Understood." That night, everything changed. Not because it had hurt before. But because for the first time I no longer wanted to belong to that family. I wanted justice, silent but sharp, cold but fair. And for that, I didn't need to make noise. I just needed to do it right. The following week, while she posted countdowns with her nails done and lashes glued on, I stayed silent. But I made moves. Because she didn't know that the venue she was going to get married at had been recommended by me months ago. That the owner loved me. And that no contract had been signed yet in the bride's name. The date was still open. All it needed was a deposit. And a name. She also didn't know that, in silence, I had been saving money for almost 2 years. Not out of pride. But because I knew one day I'd need to stand tall. And now I knew exactly how. On paper, the venue was mine, paid in full, quietly, no scandal. With receipt and keys in hand. On the big day, she woke up thinking the world revolved around her. She posted stories, got her makeup and hair done. Said it was the happiest day of her life. Meanwhile, I was already at the venue, empty. With the kind of silence that comes right before impact. I sat alone on the chairs at the reception and took a deep breath. This wasn't revenge. It was just giving her exactly what she gave me, disregard. But with a bit more elegance, when they arrived. There were no flowers, no photographer, just a padlock. And a discreet sign on the door, "Private event rescheduled by the owner's decision." They tried calling, knocking, saying it was a mistake. But it wasn't, it was just the beginning. The first reaction was the most predictable, confusion. Cars started lining up in front of the venue as if they were in the wrong place. Phones came out, messages were sent. I saw my mother press her face against the car window, wearing the same expression she used to have when her credit card got declined. My father got out of the car with short, awkward steps, like the blame was on the ground, and my sister couldn't hide it. First she laughed, as if convinced this was just some system error. Then she started yelling at the driver, at the wedding planner, at her own makeup. I watched from a distance. From inside a rented car that I had parked strategically across the street. Not out of fear but for control. I wanted to see with my own eyes what it looked like when arrogance finally ran into a wall built out of everything they always denied I had. Power, planning, presence. The sign was there. Just a simple sheet of paper, neatly typed, "Private event rescheduled by decision of the owner." Nothing else needed to be said. The venue was mine for that date. Legally, logistically, emotionally. There was no fine print, no hidden clause that could get them through those doors. They tried calling the owner of the place, not knowing she was away on vacation, a gift from me. In gratitude for years of good advice, the key was with me, and no one there had the slightest idea.
They
couldn't even imagine I was less than 20 meters away, watching everything unfold. It was almost comical. Guests started arriving. Some laughed, others frowned in confusion. Most of them thought it was a prank. Oh, it must just be running late. I'm sure everything's fine inside. They're probably just finishing up some last details. Details, yes. Just not the ones they expected. My sister paced back and forth, clutching her dress like it was armor. But that wasn't going to protect her from reality. At one point, she grabbed her phone and called me. I let it ring. Then I hung up. On the third call, I answered. And I heard, "What did you do?" I took a deep breath. I didn't answer with anger. I didn't yell. I just said, "You told me not to bring my poor energy." So I brought my rich girl organization. Silence. On the other end, nothing but heavy breathing. I kept going. The venue is in my name. The date is paid. The key is with me. Everything's perfectly legal. You know what that means? That your only mistake was believing I was still the shadow you used to know. She hung up on me, probably crying, still not fully realizing the magnitude of what was happening. Because up until that moment, she thought she could snap her fingers and fix everything, the way she always had. But this time, the fingers snapping were on my side. The planner tried to improvise, called around for other venues, but the whole city was booked. Weddings, graduations, corporate events. May weekends are chaos. And she had never bothered to secure a backup plan. After all, in her mind, everything would work out. It always did, not anymore. Meanwhile, I climbed up to the venue's balcony. From where I stood, I could see everything. The expressions, the frantic hand gestures, the chaos slowly taking shape. And for a moment I felt pity for myself. For the girl I used to be years ago, begging for respect in that very same family. For the teenager who was told, "You'll never be anything," during silent dinners. For the woman who was called poor energy by someone who thought class came from rented dresses. Not character. But that pity faded. It was replaced by something else. Certainty. The certainty that I didn't need validation anymore, only justice. And this right here before me was just the first domino to fall. The first thing they tried to do was recover control. Typical. When things start slipping, people like them think money and fast talking can fix anything. My sister grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and started calling vendors like her life depended on it. Florists, photographers, caterers. I knew the order she'd go in. I had memorized her mind years ago, because that's what the ignored one always ends up doing. Studying people to survive them. She had no idea that every vendor she contacted had already received a quiet message from me 3 days prior. Just a heads up, the event may be cancelled. No refunds allowed as per contract clause 4B. One replied with, "Understood. Thank you for the professionalism. I paid in advance, I paid in full. And I paid in." Silence. She screamed at the florist when she realized the arrangements were still at the shop, untouched. "You were supposed to deliver at noon," she barked. The florist, who had known me since I was 15, calmly replied, "We only take orders from the listed client. That's not you." The caterer said the same thing. So did the decorator. So did the string quartet that was supposed to play her grand entrance song. They were all bound to me, not just legally but loyally. Because unlike my sister, I treated them with dignity when I booked their services. No diva behavior, no passive aggression, no late payments. Just a quiet woman with a plan. She tried to get a refund. Called the florist again, this time with my father on the line, threats, tears, but I had taken care of that too. I had chosen vendors with integrity and firm policies, people who wouldn't cave under emotional outbursts. People who had been stepped on by Britzillas before and had learned to stand tall. In the family group chat, the narrative began to twist. Suddenly I was the unstable one. "She's always been jealous," someone typed. "I think she needs help," wrote another. I didn't reply. I never do in those moments. Because every second they spend talking about me ... is a second they're not fixing their own mess. That night, my sister posted a story on her social media, a filtered selfie, tear-stained and angry with a caption that read, "Some people can't stand seeing you happy." The comments exploded with sympathy from people who didn't know the full story. That was fine. Let her play the victim in public. Because privately she knew exactly what this was. She had laughed at me in front of the family. She had dismissed me, insulted me, and made me feel small on a day that wasn't even about her. She thought she could weaponize shame. But I didn't use shame to fight back. I used logistics. That's what made the sting sharper. No yelling, no threats. No mess. Just one phone call to each vendor, days before she realized what was coming. That's all it took. I didn't need to sabotage anything. I just made sure she'd be held accountable to the very things she thought she controlled. And in that moment, standing outside a locked venue with a limp bouquet and a photographer, refusing to shoot off contract, she began to understand something. I hadn't changed. I had evolved. It only took a few hours for the whispers to start. Some relatives were too polite to say it out loud, but I could feel their fingers hovering over their phones, ready to text me. Why would you do that? I expected it. I even welcomed it. But the one who decided to play savior first was Aunt Mel. She called me that evening. Her voice dripping with fake empathy, the kind that only shows up when it's convenient to mediate a disaster. Honey, she began, I know tensions are high, but this wedding meant a lot to your sister. You've made your point. Maybe now's the time to be the bigger person. The bigger person, that phrase always came with the unspoken message. Swallow your pain, protect their comfort. And I had done that for years. I had bitten my tongue every Christmas, every birthday, every Sunday dinner where I was the punchline and the afterthought. But this time, I had receipts, literal receipts. And a plan. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. Thank you for the call, I said calmly. And then I hung up. They had told the guests, every last one of them, that the wedding had been sabotaged. That I had hacked the system, stolen their date, done something illegal. That I had ruined what was supposed to be a fairy tale moment out of spite. It was easier to paint me as the villain than to admit the truth, that they had built their celebration on a foundation of entitlement, and I had simply stepped out from under it. So I logged into the venue's security system, a privilege I had as the listed renter. I downloaded the footage, my sister and her groom arriving in full wedding attire, staring blankly at the locked gate. My father shaking it with his hands like a child denied candy. My mother pacing back and forth, visibly distressed.
And my
sister, yelling at the staff, pointing fingers, her mascara already trailing down her cheek. It wasn't dramatic. No physical altercations, no screaming matches. Just enough to reveal the truth. They had no access. Because they had no right. I uploaded the clip to a private YouTube link. No name, no commentary. Just a time-stamped reel of cold, hard reality. Then I sent the link to every guest whose number I had. Friends, distant cousins, former classmates. People who had bought gifts and showed up expecting a celebration, only to be told a villainous fairy tale about me. The responses came fast. Wait. They lied about what happened. You own the venue? Your sister said you called the cops. What? I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Some apologized. Some stayed silent, but the best part? The story couldn't be controlled anymore. It leaked. Like ink on a white dress, screenshots were posted. DMs shared. And the one thing my sister valued more than the wedding itself, her reputation, began to peel and crack under the weight of her own narrative. I didn't even have to say a word. Just showed them what was already there. Because people believe what they see. And now they saw her not as the glowing bride, but as the woman locked out of her own fantasy, screaming at a reality she never thought she'd have to face. And that was only the beginning. It didn't take long for them to start their damage control campaign. My sister was never one to sit in silence, especially when the narrative slipped from her fingers. The morning after the wedding that never happened, she started planting her version of the story like weeds in every family conversation she could find. Suddenly, everyone was a witness. Everyone had a comment, and I was apparently the immature one. The family group chat lit up before I'd even had breakfast. My aunt, the one who cried the hardest at every reunion just for the attention, dropped the first comment. It's a shame what bitterness can do to a family. That alone didn't faze me. But then came my uncle, the armchair philosopher. Real strength is knowing when to forgive. We all have scars. And finally, as if on cue, my mother posted, "Some people don't know how to separate hurt from maturity." That one made me pause, coming from a woman who had laughed as my sister humiliated me in front of guests, who watched as I was excluded from bridal events, who co-signed every dig and every dismissive glance, now trying to rewrite herself as the voice of wisdom. That was the final push I needed. I didn't say a word. No long text, no emotional outburst, just facts. I scrolled through my files, found the PDF, and screenshotted the first page of the contract. My name, the venue's name, the booked date, and the full payment status, paid 6 months earlier. That image said everything I didn't need to. I uploaded the screenshot, sent it to the family group chat, and put my phone down. Silence. No emojis. No. Wow. No backpedaling. Just the quiet acknowledgement that they had no comeback. They couldn't spin this. I wasn't the bitter one. I was the planner. The one who, after years of being dismissed, decided not to scream, but to prepare, quietly, efficiently, and legally. Hours passed. I checked again. A few messages had been deleted. My cousin removed herself from the group. One of the aunts texted me privately with a cautious, "I didn't know all the details, I'm sorry." But by then, the point wasn't to gather apologies. It was to make sure no one could twist the truth into something comfortable for them. They had lied to guests. Sighed, I sabotaged the wedding out of jealousy. That I broke into their reservation, that I stole her venue. But what they hadn't counted on was that I had simply acted first, paid first, chosen first. While they played games, I was doing what they thought I'd never be capable of, outmaneuvering them. And now, with one image, their story collapsed. Not in drama. Not in tears, but in cold, undeniable evidence. The best part? I didn't even have to stay in that chat. I exited minutes later, no parting words, no final statements. Just the digital equivalent of turning around and walking out with my head high while they sat stunned, still processing the fact that for once they weren't the ones controlling the room, and that was only the beginning. I knew they wouldn't stop. My sister had always operated under the assumption that rules were for other people, that she could talk, charm, or guilt her way around anything that didn't suit her. So after the bombshell of the contract reveal, I wasn't surprised when word got around that she was replanning the wedding. Same weekend, same guests, different location. And supposedly, the venue had come to an agreement with her to work something out. That was a lie. The venue had terms, clauses, binding agreements. With my signature on them, the hall was mine, not just for the date, but for exclusive use. And when they tried to go around that, I made sure those clauses were respected. By the book. Without emotion, I contacted the venue manager the same morning. Politely, of course, professionally, I asked if they had received any communication about a last-minute event. They had. My sister had tried to say it was a family emergency event and that she was entitled to use the space. The manager was already concerned. That's when I sent the notice, drafted not by me but by a lawyer I had on retainer. A friend from college, the same college they said I'd never get into. He'd reviewed the contract before I even booked the venue, just in case. He specialized in small business protections and event contracts. This was his playground. The notice was clear. Any attempt to access the venue under false pretenses would be considered trespassing and breach of contract. The venue, now fully informed, was legally obligated to enforce it. They were furious. I heard from a cousin that my sister had a meltdown when she got the call. She'd already rehired the decorator, told the caterer to just show up, and even promised guests a surprise comeback. But there would be no comeback. The doors would be locked. The staff instructed. Security notified. And all of it happened without me raising my voice. The day before the wedding that wasn't, she tried calling me. 8 times, I didn't answer. She messaged me saying I was being childish. I replied with a copy of the venue's email confirming the terms. She blocked me again, but she couldn't block the reality. I hadn't sabotaged anything.
I'd
Simply protected what was mine. And in doing so, I made sure the rules applied to everyone, even her. For once, her name didn't carry more weight than the paper she ignored. And no tantrum, no manipulation, no tears would change that. What they thought was going to be an improvised miracle turned into a legal dead end. And me? I slept well that night. Not because I had ruined anything, but because I had stopped pretending that fairness would ever come from silence. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I planned, protected, and followed through, just like she never thought I would. I anticipated they'd scramble. After all, people like my sister don't fold, they pivot. When the venue was locked down, her instinct wasn't to reflect or take responsibility. It was to salvage what she could of her image. She needed a plan B, and she needed it fast. But what she didn't know was that I'd already prepared for that too. Months earlier, when I booked the original venue, I knew that simply reserving one location might not be enough. I'd grown up watching how they operated, cutting corners, lying their way through closed doors, always believing that rules were just suggestions for people like me, not them. So I spent a few weeks researching every decent event space in the city. From banquet halls to fancy restaurants, even community centers. Anything that could hold over 50 guests. Then I booked them all, under different names, using friends, classmates, and a few contacts from my job. One weekend, one city. Dozens of small deposits, non-refundable. Most people wouldn't go to that extent. But then again, most people haven't been told their whole lives that they're just the backup sibling. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the message. So when my sister's venue dreams shattered, she did exactly what I expected. She called the second best hall in town, fully booked. Then the third, booked. Even the rundown place near the highway? Sorry, taken. Every call was the same. Unavailable. No slots. Convention weekend, overcapacity, no exceptions. And it really was convention weekend. That part wasn't a lie. Tech expos, bridal fairs, out-of-town weddings. It made the perfect smokescreen. No one questioned why everything was reserved. No one suspected that one person had orchestrated the entire blackout. I did hear through the grapevine that she finally found a park. A public open-air space where no reservation was needed. A gazebo and a few benches, no electricity. No shelter. But it was all she had left. The night before, someone texted me, "You're insane." In a good way. I didn't respond. Because it wasn't about being petty. It was about being thorough. They had spent years teaching me that I didn't matter. That I didn't belong. That I wasn't worth investing in. So I invested in myself, and in my strategy she mocked me for being quiet. For staying home, for wasting time with spreadsheets. And schedules. But those spreadsheets just shut down her entire wedding. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. No one saw it coming, but everyone would see what came next. I didn't plan the weather. That was the one piece I can't take credit for. But if the universe wanted to pitch in, who was I to object? That morning I woke up early. Not because I had anywhere to be, I didn't, but because I wanted to. See if they'd actually go through with it. The whispers had reached me. The ceremony would still happen, rain or shine. It had no choice. Too many invitations sent, too many promises made. Too many lies told, their new plan, a city park, no tents. No canopy, no backup power. Just hope. And maybe a few umbrellas. By noon, the clouds rolled in. I stood by my window, coffee in hand, watching as the sky shifted from gray to black. I didn't smile. Not outwardly. But something inside me, the version of me they once silenced, felt seen. My phone started buzzing around 1 p.m., not with direct messages, but group chats, distant relatives, even old school friends. Is it true they're doing it outside? Wait, do you see this? Oh my God, look at these photos. The pictures spread fast. A soggy aisle made from cheap synthetic fabric, curled at the edges and slipping in the mud. Guests huddled together, holding purses over their heads. A string quartet that never arrived. Folding chairs sinking into the earth, and in the center, the cake. It had been placed too early, left out too long, The frosting began to melt. Then the bottom layer tilted, then collapsed entirely. Someone tried to save it, but all they did was smear it further into the grass. That's the image that went viral. Not the vows, not the kiss, not the bride in her dress. No, the photo that traveled fastest was of that white, once elegant cake, sagging under the weight of 1,000 missteps, slowly dissolving into a puddle of dirt and shame. Some guests tried to leave early, but the parking lot was unpaved, tires got stuck. Shoes were ruined, and the officiant? He arrived 45 minutes late and left 15 minutes early. I was told my sister cried in the bathroom. But not for love, for embarrassment. At one point, they tried to rally, to shift the mood. A cousin tried to cheer people up by playing music from a Bluetooth speaker. The bride and groom danced alone under a leaking tree. It wasn't romantic. It was pitiful. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to show up, scream, or even whisper. I just waited. And the universe delivered a performance worthy of all the years I spent pretending not to care. It was nature's applause for every time I held my tongue while they laughed in my face. For every time I was called too sensitive, too dramatic, too poor. They had planned a fantasy. What they got was a disaster. And not because I ruined it, but because I was the only one who ever planned anything right. The backlash didn't take long. By the next morning, the group chat was buzzing again. But this time, no one was trying to be poetic or wise. They were angry, embarrassed, looking for someone to pin it on. And in true family fashion, the blame circled around until it found the one person who wasn't even at the wedding, me. I got tagged in passive-aggressive posts. Some people find joy in others' pain. Blood means nothing to some. You don't turn your back on family. All indirect, of course. No one had the spine to say my name. But I didn't need a name tag to know they were pointing fingers. Even my mother joined in. You should have helped fix things instead of making them worse, she wrote in the group. As if I had walked into the rainstorm and pushed the cake over myself. That's when I knew it was time to remind them. Not of the venue, not of the contracts, but of the reason this all started. I opened my camera roll, scrolled back, found it instantly. The video was short, just 12 seconds, but perfectly preserved. It was from a family dinner nearly a year ago. Everyone laughing, glasses clinking, and in the center, my sister turning toward me with that familiar smirk. Don't bring your poor energy into my wedding, okay? I want real elegance, not thrift store drama. Laughter. A few gasps, my mother covering her mouth, but not in disapproval. More like amusement. I had said nothing that day. I just blinked and swallowed it, but now I uploaded it. No hashtags. No filter, just the video and a single caption. This is where she lost the venue. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't share it in the family chat. I didn't even check the comments. But I knew they saw it. My cousin messaged me first. You really posted that? Then silence. And slowly, like dominoes tipping, the tone began to shift. Some started defending me in private messages. Honestly, you were too kind. They had it coming. You didn't make the wedding fail. They did. The same people who laughed before now watched their own faces in that video, frozen in time, as witnesses to a cruelty they had once ignored. And suddenly, it was undeniable. My silence hadn't been weakness. It had been the seed. And now the bloom of truth was impossible to prune. No yelling, no drama. Just a moment, preserved and timed like a final chess move. I didn't even need to narrate it. The video said everything. I had receipts. And when you grow up being told you're second best, not really family, or just a burden, you learn to keep receipts. Not for revenge, but for self-defense. They thought I would forget, that I would get over it. Instead, I documented it. And when they came at me with shame and accusation, I didn't run or explain. I replied with the one thing they could never erase. Proof that this wasn't about a wedding. It was about years of erasure, disguised as jokes about being the family's scapegoat until the mirror finally turned around, and for once they had to watch themselves. They say time softens things. That people forget the details and just remember the feelings, maybe that's true. But some disasters leave impressions too deep for time to smooth out. And my sister's wedding, or whatever that muddy, chaotic afternoon was, became one of those permanent scars etched into the family memory. Of course, she tried to rewrite it. Within weeks, the narrative started shifting. The forecast changed suddenly. The venue pulled out without warning. Vendors canceled last minute. She said it with conviction too. As if she could gaslight the entire guest list. As if photos didn't exist. As if every moment hadn't already been uploaded, commented on, and memed to death. But the truth had momentum. Whenever someone in the family talks about weddings now, cousins planning theirs, distant relatives asking for tips, someone always brings it up. Remember what happened with hers, and the room tightens. Eyes drift, heads turn. And inevitably someone glances toward me. I never say a word, not a brag, not a smirk. Just a quiet sip of water, a calm blink, maybe a knowing smile if I'm feeling generous. Because what would I even say? That I warned her? That mocking me has consequences? That treating people like background noise eventually gets your mic cut? No, the power isn't in the telling. It's in the fact that I don't need to. She lives with it now. Not just the failed event, but the silence that follows her into every room. People don't look at her the same. Not because of me. Because of what she revealed when the pressure was on. How quickly the golden daughter became just a girl in a soaked dress, screaming at clouds that didn't care. And me. I moved out, got promoted. Built a name for myself not in spite of them, but because of everything they taught me about who not to be. I still see her sometimes. Family events, holidays, she tries to play nice. She calls me sis, like nothing ever happened. Like she never laughed at my clothes, or my job, or my lack of status. But the edge in her voice always gives her away. She knows I don't buy it. One time, someone joked, "At least no one can top that wedding story." She laughed too loud. Looked around. Waited for someone to join in. No one did. I didn't even look up from my plate, because I didn't need to dot my... Revenge was never about ruining her day. It was about proving that I could build something quietly, precisely, in the shadows of their mockery, and then let the light hit it at just the right angle. So that they'd all have no choice. But to see me not as the poor one. Not as the forgotten one, but as the one who played the long game and won.